let me first, sort of just CIFOR has been working in Indonesia since this creation in 1993, and is the only international organization headquartered in Indonesia, the CGIAR Center, and we have had this program on REDD for a long time. And this is something that we are very proud of, and that's why it's very important for us to have this workshop now, because we are reaching a very interesting time together with our partners from the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. And here I have to apologize on behalf of Park Rwanda, the Director General of Climate Control of the MOF, because he was supposed to deliver an opening address also, but has been called at the last minute to a very important meeting with the Vice Minister. So he apologized and sent us his good wishes for the success of the workshop, and he will listen to the recording and the live stream. Now, if you think about REDD, it really took off in 2007 at the Bali COP, and then it was followed by a series of COP Poznan, Copenhagen, Paris, and here we are now in 2020, so 13 years after this takeoff, and we are seeing the first result-based payment coming into Indonesia, one part of the letter of intent with Norway, another one from the Green Climate Fund, and for about a total of about $160 million. And so that's very timely to discuss this whole issue and say, okay, this.
Robert, you are unmuted yourself.
Yeah, the host muted me. So should we have this payment at the national or at the subnational level? Who is to be paid for, and why are we paying people, and what will be the impact ultimately of such payment in terms of achieving the overall purpose of REDD+? And also, quite interestingly, and this whole issue of payment for results in a context like climate change or reduced emission from deforestation and fragmentation is the whole issue of accountability. If you are doing all the efforts you can, or in terms of reducing degradation, and if your neighbor, whatever the neighbor is, it could be another Kabupaten at the subnational level, or another province, or another country at the national level, is having such a behavior that it impacts on your performance, who is accountable for it, and who needs to be paid or not to be paid, and how is it going to work? And these things are very important and very interesting to consider in the whole issue of the governance of this result-based payment. So I would like to thank again, of course, our Indonesian partner, but also the many partners that we have had along this long journey of the global comparative study on REDD. And most particularly, I would like to thank Norway, who has been supporting us during these 10 years. And without them, we will not be there. So thanks again. And I hope you won't be disappointed. I'm sure you won't be disappointed. And we are going to have a very interesting meeting, very interesting workshop. And we are in the good hands of Vani and Amy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert. Now we are moving to the next speaker. Pleased to invite Dr. Marianne Johansen, Consular Team Leader, Climate Change and Forests at the Royal Norwegian Embassy in Jakarta, to give a talk about bilateral REDD partnership between Indonesia and Norway. Marianne, please.
Thank you so much. I hope you can all hear me. And also thank you so much to CIFOR for organizing this workshop. And thanks to all participants that I understand come from many places on the planet that have taken the time to join the workshop here in Indonesia. So thanks to all. So let me start. So 10 years ago, when Indonesia and Norway agreed to form a partnership on REDD+, we both committed to sailing an uncharted sea. This meant that we were trying something new and something innovative. It was bound to not be completely linear process. Rather, it was, and still is, a dynamic cooperation responding to challenges as they arise. I believe that in itself has great value. And earlier this year, we confirmed that the results-based payment for Indonesia's reduced deforestation in 2016-17 would be subject to results-based payment. And with that, we are now moving into the third phase of our partnership, which is, of course, a very important step forward to us. So the government of Indonesia, and then primarily through the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, has been very committed to improve natural resource management and its governance. Minister Siti Nurbaya has reformed the merged Ministries of Environment and Forestry and put forward a range of transformative policies. And importantly also has consistently implemented and further improved them along the way. Social forestry, the permanent logging moratorium, revision of the peat regulation, the palm oil moratorium, and the NDC roadmap are all examples of this. And clearly, this is a result of political leadership and not results-based payment. And I think this is an important point. Reduced deforestation and sustainable land use come from transformational policy and their firm implementation. With the current level of climate funding, results-based payments alone are no real economic alternative to unsustainable natural resource exploitation. It is Indonesia's commitment to reducing deforestation that has created results. But still, there are many reasons why results-based payments have an important role to play, and I will share 3 of them with you now. I think, firstly, results-based payments are based on verified emission reductions. It is payment for a quantifiable global public good. It is not a gift. Secondly, substantial results-based payments are an international recognition of a country's efforts. Recognizing hard work and good results is immensely important and brings highly deserved domestic and international attention. The money itself can also support existing reform processes and accelerate action on the ground, leading in turn to a more rapid decrease in deforestation. And the third point is that results-based funding can create a chain reaction that leverage other funding. We believe that climate funding will increase with time and remain hopeful that more donors will come on board. But where we see the biggest potential is in the emerging carbon market. Countries that have emission reductions of high environmental integrity are likely to attract serious buyers that contributing significantly to accessible funding for national deforestation results. The implementation of the Paris Agreement with its modality to increase ambitions over time will drive this demand, and REDD+ has paved the way. So let me finish by just underlining that the climate crisis is still here and it urgently needs to be resolved. And we also know that nature itself, and especially the remaining rainforest, is an essential part of the solution. Continued and strong support to countries like Indonesia for their efforts to protect forests and reduce deforestation is highly needed. And results-based payments continues to be one of the most powerful support mechanisms to this end. Clearly, they can add incentives and play a useful role where there is already political commitment to reform, as illustrated under President Joko Widodo and Minister Siti Nurbaya here in Indonesia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marianne. So ladies and gentlemen, after we heard the opening remarks and highlight from the bilateral partnership between Indonesia and Norway, I hope we are all ready to further discuss about result-based payment in Indonesia, who to pay, how to set reference level, who should benefit, and how REDD governance can be improved to enable result-based payment in multiple levels. To give you insight of CIFOR work on REDD, let us see a short video of CIFOR Global Comparative Study on REDD. How to set reference level, who should benefit, and how REDD governance can be improved to enable result-based payment in multiple levels. To give you insight of CIFOR work on REDD, let us see a short video of CIFOR Global Comparative Study on REDD. How to set reference level, who should benefit, and how REDD governance can be improved to enable result-based payment in multiple levels. To give you insight of CIFOR work on REDD, let us see a short video of CIFOR Global Comparative Study.
CIFOR's Global Comparative Study on REDD Plus is the largest of its kind. The goal is to produce information, analysis, and tools to promote what we call 3E outcomes in REDD Plus design and implementation. So those are outcomes that are effective, efficient, and equitable. And this is based on more than 10 years of research, capacity building, CIFOR's Global Comparative Study on REDD Plus is the largest of forest-rich tropical countries. The goal is to produce information, and our theory of change for the project is focused on co-production of knowledge with REDD Plus design and implementation. Ranging from those are outcomes that are civil society and private sector actors, and research organizations, and local communities. This is based on, and really at the heart of what more than 10 years, is generating and leveraging very strong evidence in 20 to help inform forest-friendly policies and actions. And our theory of change for the project is focused on co-production of knowledge with REDD Plus design and implementation. Ranging from those are outcomes that are civil society and private sector actors, and research organizations, and local communities. This is based on, and really at the heart of what more than 10 years, is generating and leveraging very strong evidence in 20 to help inform forest-friendly policies and actions. And our theory of change for the project is focused on co-production of knowledge with REDD Plus design and implementation. Ranging from those are outcomes that are civil society and private sector actors, and research organizations, and this is based on, and really at the heart of what more than 10 years, is generating and leveraging very strong evidence in 20 to help inform forest-friendly policies. And our theory of change for the project is focused on co-production of knowledge with REDD Plus design and implementation. Ranging from those are outcomes that are civil society and private sector actors, and research organizations, and this is based on, and really at the heart of what more than 10 years, is generating and leveraging very strong evidence in 20 to help inform forest-friendly policies. And our theory of change for the project is focused on co-production of knowledge with REDD Plus design and implementation. Ranging from those are outcomes that are civil society and private sector actors, and research organizations, and this is based on, and really at the heart of what more than 10 years.
We really apologize for the error just happened now. We hope that our IT backup can fix that soon. It is so unfortunate that we are unable to show the video, but we will, I hope later, while waiting them to fix that. So it's really apologies for that. Ladies and gentlemen, we will proceed with the next agenda. Result-based payment, global outlook, and Indonesia, moderated by Dr. Amy Dushel, team leader of CIFOR Climate Change team. Over
Great.
to you, Amy.
Thanks a lot, Vani, and that was a strange video experience. kind of dynamic, but not getting the message across that we had hoped. All of the materials will be available on CIFOR's website. It's a 3-minute video. Please watch it. It gives a nice overview of our 10-year study. In the meantime, I want to go now to the next session, and we have 3 speakers who are talking about, to give the global context of results-based payment, as well as some insights from Indonesia. So we will start with Mark Dumas Johansen from the Green Climate Fund. The exciting news of the last few months was the approved project from the Green Climate Fund to Indonesia. I know Mark has been spearheading that work in partnership with the government of Indonesia and many other actors. So congratulations. And we're going to hear more about that now directly from the source. So Mark, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Amy, and thank you so much, colleagues. It's great to be here with you today. I prepared 2 slides. I'll quickly put them up here. I hope you can all see this. I had the opportunity and the pleasure to briefly share with you this fantastic highlight, as Amy said, that at the B26 meeting that took place a few months ago, our board approved the largest REDD+ RBP proposal so far, and the first one in Asia, in Indonesia, developed by UNDP and the government of Indonesia. So I'm quickly going to take you through the project itself, and happy to take any questions later on today. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. So before going into the details of the project you see outlined here, when we receive projects within the pilot program, we screen them across a scorecard we have developed, and you see a brief highlight here on the left side of the screen, where the volume offered to us goes to this internal review process, where we look mainly at the FREL and the technical annex, and then score that, and then we get a final volume which, multiplied by $5 per ton, is then the final payment. In the case of Indonesia, you see here that 27 million were offered to us, and after reviewing the proposal, we ended up with 20 million, bringing us to a total payment of 103 million across 4 years of implementation, but for results achieved in 2014 to 2016. We pay for past results that have been achieved between 2013 and 2018. And as mentioned, this proposal was developed by the Ministry of Finance and UNDP. And in particular, we're also very, very excited about the use of proceeds, which we found to be very, very innovative. And I have the next slide, please, where this is outlined a bit further. And just to recap the first part, you see here a brief copy of the terms of reference for the pilot program, where it's highlighted that the use of proceeds has to be reinvested in activities that are aligned with the NDC, the REDD+ strategy, and low carbon development plans, and also be compliant with the GCF policies. So Indonesia and UNDP developed this idea here to use this for 2 outputs. There's a lot of flexibility, I have to say, in how countries use the proceeds, as long as they are in line with what is described here above 1.14, then there's so much flexibility. So it's an opportunity to be very innovative, and we found Indonesia's idea here very, very innovative. First of all, to strengthen the national REDD+ architecture, but in particular, the majority of the funds are going into output 2, which is to continue the support to decentralized sustainable forest governance, mainly looking at 2 of the key units in place already, the social forestry program and the forest management unit, which are really excellent opportunities to work at the decentralized level and channel investments and work directly with communities and eventually achieve future results. So we are very, very pleased with this, and very, very excited to really have this approved not long time ago, first time in Asia, and also the largest proposal so far in terms of volume and funding. And I believe I have maybe 1 minute left, Amy, so I'll be very quick. Just the last slide, please. Just before I say my thank you, just to share with you colleagues that we have started to work on the continuation of the pilot program, either as a direct continuation or as a different phase that remains to be determined. But this is being developed as we speak, and we hope to share more with stakeholders, with colleagues later this year, and eventually next year have much more details to work with you on. In particular, we look forward to your expertise and to your ideas on this, so we can make sure that we have the best possible continuation going forward. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Mark. And I already see questions for you popping up in the chat box, so you can go in there and address the participants. Please do put your comments for Mark and the other speakers into the chat box. That can be a dynamic forum for sharing ideas as well. So let's move on to the next speaker. We'll have a question and answer in the chat box and at the end. This is Errol Engelsen, who is a professor at the Norwegian University of Life Science and a long-term associate for CIFOR. You probably know him from all of the REDD+ work he's done. He's edited our 4 major CIFOR books on REDD+, and he's really been a thought leader and partner for us on the REDD+ issue. So he'll be talking about results-based payment and the politics of numbers. So Errol, please go ahead.
Thank you. Is my voice okay?
Sounds good.
Great. So next. First, I start with a kind of a definition of result-based payment. It has got many names: payment for environmental services, output performance-based, etc. But it's essentially the same idea, and it's 3 main criteria. First, you make an agreement on predefined results. You cannot come afterwards and say that, well, this was result-based payment, we should pay it ex post. The second basic principle is to have recipient discretion in the way that the agent, those implementing, are kind of responsible and can have a great deal of freedom in how to achieve those results. And the third is some independent verification of those results, which is important. Does the current RBP funding meet this criteria? Only partially, I have to say. There is not kind of a straight textbook, but some modification of that. For example, in recipient discretion and negotiation of result. Next. I talk about 3 challenges. And the question of what to pay for have 2 dimensions. First is where to pay along the impact chain from inputs, activities, outputs, etc., corresponding to the red phases that we all are familiar to. It's strong arguments for pay kind of as far to the right as possible, outcomes and impacts. But it's also more difficult in terms of measurement, setting reference level, sharing the risk, because the further to the right, the less control the implementer will have over the final result. It's a lot of noise and external factors. The second aspect is which outcomes, just carbon or also non-carbon benefits, and if we have non-carbon benefits, should they be included as constraints, for example, as is done with safeguards, or should it be in form of extra payment? Next, please. The ways forward, I have come to the conclusion that, okay, although the ultimate goal is to pay for results, you need also incentives along the way from all the REDD stages. Focus on carbon, and many may disagree with me here, but I think, first of all, climate change and reducing emission is sufficiently important to be the main focus. I think an equally important argument is that it's largely compatibility between the different goals, say biodiversity, livelihoods, adaptation, etc. Particularly if one uses payment for environmental services as one of the articles in the book that came in 2018 by Amy and colleagues clearly shows. Next, please. Second is the problem is to define the emission reduction. And that is essentially the same as setting the FRELs or reference levels more general. I use reference level baseline as kind of interchangeably. An emission reduction is defined as shown in the figure between as a difference between a natural emissions, for example, forest carbon stock, and a reference level. Now, it has two meanings in the debate, which is confusing. What I call the business as usual baseline, which is the basis for assessing the impact, the counterfactual, what would happen without the REDD policy or project. And the second is the crediting baseline, which is the basis for to pay. Now, they may not need to be the same. You may kind of have a tighter crediting baseline than the business as usual baseline. Next, please. Just to illustrate how important, I use two countries a bit far from Indonesia, but still, the time period. The Amazon Fund has a rule of setting the reference level equal to the average for the last 10 years and updating. And you can see the lines here, the yellow, green, and blue, that how they have changed. Now in the UNFCCC submission, Brazil says that it should have a so-called dynamic baseline starting in 1996 and then being updated or years are added. Now you see the difference here between the two. In 2019, did Brazil reduce emissions? Well, it all depends on the reference level. If you choose the Amazon Fund reference level, the answer is no if you have the UNFCCC submitted. So this is a clear case where kind of the time period matters enormously. Peru is another example for how to set the baseline where they use a trend. So they extrapolate, doing some simple regression analysis here, and they end up with a reference level that is higher than it. I'm not saying what is correct or not, just that it matters. Next, please. Ways forward, I think, to clarify the key aspects, whether it's for a national or a regional level, to clarify what are kind of eligible national or regional circumstances, the time period to avoid this kind of gaming. And third-party independent review, and the need also for governments to outsource some tasks to have kind of a third party to settle this. Next, please. Whom to pay? In an article, also as part of the GCS, led by Cecilia Luttrell, we defined kind of 6 potential recipients of the payment, and Myra will talk more after on this. This is incredibly hard. And for example, if some deforestation may be semi-legal, and who owns the reduction from, for example, a palm oil concession not granted or a policy change. Next, please. I think the ways forward, we need to balance this effectiveness, efficiency. There's no kind of correct way, so eventually it's a political negotiation. My main principles is those that incur the cost, the opportunity cost of not being able to convert forest to agriculture or other purposes, and also the attribution of results, who made it. So this kind of links to the 2 essential aspects of result-based payment. It's a fair compensation to those that incur the cost, but it's also incentives to change behavior. They may not be the same, but I think these 2 principles should guide us. Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Errol. A lot of food for thought there. And please do put your questions for Errol in the chat box, comments, anything. We already have some good observations happening there. So I will introduce our 3rd speaker of the session. This is Moira Moliono. Moira is a senior researcher at CIFOR, and she'll be talking about some comparative work that relates to results payments from Brazil, Indonesia, and Vietnam. Moira?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you all for making the time to be here. I'm speaking on behalf of the whole team under Tui Tufam and Bimo Disatrio, so it's not my work alone. Next slide, please. So the topic of this workshop is results-based payment. In support of this, our presentation will show how different REDD policy actors in Indonesia, Brazil, and Vietnam perceive issues related to finance. We asked them to what extent they agreed or disagreed with standard statements on finance issues, derived from earlier studies during 2 periods, the 2014-2015 Policy Network Analysis 2 and 2017-2018, the PNA 3. And this is a very shortened and simplified version of our findings to be done in 5 minutes. First, most actors that we asked agree that REDD Plus should be a results-based system. There was a complete agreement, although in the last agreement was was not as strong in the earlier survey. Many actors disagreed or were unsure. On the question who should pay, most actors in Brazil and Vietnam agreed that foreign governments should be the main sources of REDD financing. In Indonesia, opinions are more divided, as many actors think that funding should also come from the national government budget, with REDD an integral part of forest governance. In the earlier survey in PNA2, agreement that markets can make a major contribution was quite high. In the last survey, however, in the 2017-18, the slow development of the carbon market has caused actors to reconsider. In Indonesia, opinion shifted to disagreement, while in Vietnam, many actors still agreed that markets are important, but disagreement and uncertainty had also increased. In Brazil, on the other hand, there was a strong agreement. As the government there is weakening environmental institutions, many actors said that the only chance for REDD within the country now is to strengthen engagement with the private sector and the market. Here on this slide, we are talking about what Ariel said earlier, who should be paid. Well, in short, all actors agree that everybody should be paid, but the division is still unclear. There is no agreement on how. Next slide. So what does this mean? After more than 10 years of REDD, perspectives differ among countries and even among actor groups in one country. Not only differ, but also change with changing political and economic context. Despite the differences overall, actors accept REDD as a results-based payment scheme to be supported at least partly by foreign governments. And while actors are somewhat pessimistic about carbon markets, they also feel that there is need for more efforts to develop and understand carbon markets because funds are becoming more scarce. At the same time, when it comes to implementation, all actors feel there is still need for a strong and most of all clear regulatory framework, indicating they perceive the existing framework is still insufficient for REDD. Another suggestion for improvement suggested by actors in Brazil, but also applicable to Indonesia and Vietnam is for local and regional authorities to have more autonomy to adjust and adapt to needs for implementation at a local, more decentralization rather than less. As said, however, perceptions differ and change, while people act and decide usually based on their perception. Thus, while it is cliché, the bottom line is that there is no one-size-fits-all formula to REDD finance, or indeed to the whole REDD scheme. With growing understanding, but also growing scarcity of funds, coupled with continuous changes in political, economic, and social context, there is need to remain flexible and adaptive and look for even more innovative solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Moira. Thank you all. So we have some questions happening in the chat box here, but so I'll bring some of those into the discussion for the next 10 minutes. Do keep adding questions there. We'd like to hear from you. Uh-oh.
Amy, you are muted.
Hello, sorry, my apologies. Somehow I'm using a computer that isn't mine and music just started. The only thing predictable about technology is that it's unpredictable. Okay, so let's move on here. A really interesting question for Mark from the Green Climate Fund, and it's not only about the Green Climate Fund payments, but it's sort of in general about the issue of timing of payments. So results are achieved and payments can come many years later. There was an issue in Brazil with this when the payment for the amazing achievement of reducing Amazonian deforestation came when Bolsonaro's government was taking over, and sort of ironically, as he was rolling back environmental and social protections. Mark, others, could you comment on this timing issue of payments?
Thank you, Amy. Thanks so much for that question. Indeed, a very, very good question. And as noted in the chat box, but also maybe just reflecting on what I mentioned before, that a key part of the terms of reference is that the results that can be submitted to us have to be achieved between 2013 and 2018, within that time period, and have to be fully reviewed and go through a due diligence to make sure that we have the best possible knowledge on how these results were achieved. So of course there are many cases, of course, where there can be certain changes in politics and government that could raise certain questions, and of course it's hard to know what the future brings and how that can impact certain results from the past. But what is clear is that the use of proceeds has to be once approved by the board. The use of the reinvestments have to be fully aligned with what has been approved. So it cannot be changed down the road to be something different. It has to still be aligned with what was approved at the time that it was submitted to us. I hope that answered the question more or less, Amy. Thank you.
We had some other questions, for Errol about similar, sort of paying actors directly affected through foregone income, but then again, the results-based payments are happening years after the fact. Can governments advance these payments without actually knowing if they will receive results-based payment? It's a related question and an important one, because landholders, having incentives for their achievements is going to make or break this. Harold?
Right, should I say? Okay, it's a good question. I start with a conclusion. I like to quote a colleague who used to say that it's better to pay twice and get something than paying once and get nothing. And this is a dilemma, particularly if we're dealing with farmers or communities, where you have to make some upfront payments to kind of make them into getting a contract because its costs are now and benefits in the future in the form of result-based payment. So some upfront payment and then some payments at the end when the results have been achieved. So I think, therefore, in practice, the payment, what you have to pay, particularly when we're talking about pessimism at local level, is much higher than just paying for the results. You need to pay upfront and you need to pay at the end of the day. But better to pay twice and get something than pay once and get nothing.
Yeah. So double payment, but no double counting.
Correct. Now that's also another question about double counting. And for example, when Norway or GCF are paying Indonesia, should they deduct the projects that have already been paid for, say, Katingan or whatever project in a voluntary carbon market? I don't think it's being done, but it would be interesting to hear from Marianne and Mark whether that is considered by them who do that. I don't think, as I wrote, it's a major problem today, but potentially in the future. And in early REDD days, we talked a lot about kind of this nested approach, which is modeled by what's called the joint implementation under the Kyoto Protocol.
And in fact, Darsono Hartono, the lead implementer of the Katingan project, is here with us as a speaker in the subnational session and will be discussing some of those issues. So we'll hear from him as well during that. I do want to move to the question of carbon markets, because I think this is something that it's, we're seeing increased demand of voluntary carbon markets. There's different kinds of compliance markets that are taking shape. Even bilateral agreements under Article 6. It's one of the most exciting elements of this process, but it's also one of the most contentious. And I thought that Moira's slide was interesting about how perceptions are evolving of carbon markets and offsetting in different countries. I think it would be interesting to hear from the speakers sort of the opportunities and Achilles heels associated with these emerging markets. Moira could maybe start. We haven't heard from her yet.
Not that I know a lot about carbon markets. I know more about the way the perceptions work. But it seems that there was a big hope that that it was very clear that that the carbon would be put on the market. Somebody was going to sell, and somebody was going to buy, and this whole process would work as other markets. And so people perceived that that was a good way to do things, and it was clear, and it also brought you some equal standards in a way. So people looked at it as a hope to solve the problem, but it just didn't work out because it's just too abstract in a way. It was like the farmer in West Kalimantan asking me, how do you package this carbon? Is it in a can? So if it were in a can, he would have known how to sell it, but because it's something that you cannot really touch and you cannot really see, it is more difficult to imagine a market. And so in the perceptions, they first thought it was a good idea, but then nothing happened and you couldn't really sell it in the can on the market. So finally people sort of lost interest in this. Still in Brazil, because of the different political situation, people are looking for other ways to raise money for their reducing emission and deforestation.
Other comments from the speakers on this issue? Harold or Mark?
Maybe I can quickly. I think the main thing to say about carbon markets is that they don't just appear from the bottom up. Well, you have the voluntary carbon market, but it has remained relatively small, although it has picked up a bit in the last 1 or 2 years. But basically, a carbon market is created by political decisions to put caps on countries or on sectors or on industries or even you and me for how much emission reductions we are allowed to have. So it's a political creation, and it's created through caps on emissions, and I can meet those restrictions by buying offsetting, buying emission reduction from others. So far, there hasn't been much will to take on those caps, and therefore the demand in the carbon market does not emerge. I think I don't see a kind of a quick that markets will emerge. It will probably be a few markets like the California, like domestic markets in Brazil, perhaps with a new president, etc. That may be, but most of them will be kind of markets like Norway and GCF are doing that. You're buying based on emission reduction. So it's kind of a market where you buy emission reduction, pay for that.
Mark, any thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I put my video again. But, thanks so much for that question. Indeed, we are monitoring that closely and making sure that if there is any progress in the future on that front, that we can react to it in the best way. I mentioned earlier the continuation of the pilot program, and we are looking very much into there to see how the private sector could play a more active role. This is still to be developed, of course, but we do hope to find a stronger role for them than we had in the current one. So hopefully that's something we can share with you going forward. But we definitely monitor this and see how we can fit into that development in the future. Thank you.
I saw Darsono with his video on, so I just want to put him on the spot because he's been dealing with this issue for a while. Don't give away what you're going to talk about in your presentation, but Darsono, it would be interesting to hear from your perspective about the, emerging carbon market opportunities for funding what you've been working on for a long time.
Thank you, Amy. Good morning, good afternoon, or good night for some of you. Thank you for putting me on a spot For some of you who don't know me, my name is Darsono Hartono. We manage the Katingan Mataya project, which is one of the largest voluntary forestry carbon credit project today. I think, for somebody who have been doing this for 13 years, we see a lot of things have changed. I think we see that the fact is, there is a real business for forestry conservation as well as restoration. Of course, the market, as some of you mentioned, is involuntary market, but I think we start seeing that it's growing tremendously, because I think the fact is more and more people realize that we need nature for our survival. When we talk about COP13 back those days in Bali, I think the actors are usually more of a state actors, right, playing this. But I think we start seeing a lot of this, and I think we need everybody to be involved, meaning that the Norwegian, the GCF, government, non-state actor, everybody had to be involved, because they are benefit for protecting nature. So I think we are excited. I think the market is really turning for voluntary market. Of course, everybody's betting on compliance, but like I said, like you mentioned, Amy, it can be very pretentious. Things can be quite complicated that way. But I think we can have this two working in parallel and then see how it goes in the next few years.
Thank you, Darsono. I'll put Marianne on the spot now too, from Norway, because I think, this carbon market issue, it's sort of the issue that we're dealing with now. And I think it's the issue where we can agree on a lot of things, and then suddenly we get to that and there's major fights and disagreements about how this should move forward. I'd be interested in hearing Norway's take on this.
Yes, thank you so much for that. I think it's quite clear that we have been interested in carbon markets for quite some time, both interested and concerned. I think it's a fair description. We really, as I also mentioned in my speech, we really see carbon markets as the main potential for REDD+ finance in the future. And I think I agree that we also see development when it comes to the demand side, that people or companies in particular is really interested to buy. I think our point of view is that a carbon market needs to ensure or to have some certain elements, and the most important part for us would be high environmental integrity of the emission reductions that are being sold. So to avoid double counting, to avoid leakage, and to have reasonable reference levels, all these elements would need to be there. And also that, I think from our point of view, it's important that the revenue of a carbon market, it goes to the government, and that it's the government regulations that, and also that the carbon or the emission reductions is a public good, and the revenue should also be distributed back to the public. So that's what I want to share about that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I think we have some nice comments and questions in the chat, that we're especially getting from Mark about sort of what the money will be used for, and the importance of these payments in the national context. And maybe we could just, Mark, if you could talk a bit about that. I mean, how you're sitting in South Korea, how are you interacting with national stakeholders about these payments and understanding where results-based payments will actually go?
Thank you, Amy. That's an excellent question. So the way that we are set up, we work through accredited entities and our NDAs, and rely on the accredited entities that when they submit a project to us on behalf of a government, that due diligence has been fully carried out, that stakeholders have been consulted. We are not able to do that fully ourselves because of our setup, so we rely on that approach, and of course, check that to the best of our possibilities, and later on that is also checked during evaluations and so on, and our annual reporting. But for the particular case of these projects, for the RBP projects, we have a more simplified reporting, giving that base that we are paying for past results, things that have already been achieved. And here we rely fully on the country and on the accredited entity, that what they have submitted to us is indeed the best way, because we don't want to be the ones dictating how the money should be used. This is indeed a very national context, and there's no right and wrong way of using the proceeds. For all the projects we have approved so far, all countries have decided to use the funds very differently, and we are likely going to see also even more use of diversified use of the proceeds in the future. So that's very interesting, and we have two projects coming up for this current board in a few weeks from now, where we will again see a very different use of the proceeds. So there, indeed, it's exciting and good to see how the accredited entities really work very closely with the government to ensure that this is being achieved in the best possible way. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Again, please add your questions to the chat because the speakers can continue to respond to you. I'm taking a lot from this session. I mean, and one of the points is really the importance of high environmental integrity. It relates to all of the presentations and including what Marianne's comments and Errol's presentation about the setting of the reference levels. And, you know, interestingly, Errol's point about the focus on carbon, how in fact that is really fundamental. And at CIFOR, you know, sort of since the very beginning, we took a very broad view of REDD+, you know, that it's not only effective in terms of reducing emissions, but it's also cost efficient and equitable with a series of co-benefits. And at the end of the day, we do need to go back to this sort of basic environmental integrity issue, because it's at the heart of what REDD+ is, if we think about it as a payment for results achieved. The importance of incentives, better to pay twice for a result than once for nothing. New quote from Errol, I like that. We have our collection going, and it's sort of interesting because it's not double counting results, but it's rather making sure that incentives get to the decision makers and farmers and landholders who really need them. And I think that's what's been lacking. Our work has shown so far, more real incentives for people who are making major changes on the ground. And then this importance of perceptions of results-based payment and, you know, not only bilateral funding, but also carbon markets, and how that not only varies by country context, but over time. And I think, Moira, I really like this longitudinal work about perceptions over time changing. REDD+ has evolved since 2005, 2007, and you know, in 2020, we're not in the same context that we were 15 years ago. And of course, perceptions of results-based payment and incentives for reducing deforestation and forest degradation are also evolving. And we need to understand those to really be working in the national context and making sure that these kinds of payments, even though they may be considered a drop in the bucket, can in fact have some transformational change. And some big impacts. Marianne, you know, listed the intermediate milestones in Indonesia, the big policy changes that have come into effect because of political will and because of sort of in the name of reducing deforestation and forest degradation. So the evolving over time as well. With that, I will close this global session. I will turn the mic back over to Vani, who will introduce two breakout sessions where we will delve more deeply in the Indonesian context. Thank you all to the speakers, and thank you to the participants for your engagement.
Thank you, Amy. Ladies and gentlemen, our next agenda is a parallel breakout group discussion. But before we move to the breakout rooms, we have a slightly adjustment on our agenda. Now we will have an interactive chatterful questions. After this, I will read two questions and will ask you to write down your response in the chat box in a maximum of 5 words. So again, each questions, you will respond the answer in a 5 words only and filling that in the chat box. I will give some time for you to type your response, but please wait my sign before you enter the chat box. So I will count 1 to 3, send, and all of us will send our answer. So let's start with the first questions. What do you think is the main challenge for effective and equitable REDD result-based payment in Indonesia? The question is appear on your screen. I will read again. What do you think is the main challenge for effective and equitable REDD result-based payment in Indonesia? Please type your response. I will give some time for you to think and type now. Not yet write down your answer? Okay, counting now. 1, 2, 3, send your answer. Okay, we would like now move to the second questions. Second question is, what do you think is the main solution for the challenge? The challenge that you just writing down in the first questions. Not yet send the answer. Think a little bit, write down on your chat box. I will count 1 to 3 before we all send the answer. What do you think is the main solution for the challenge? Okay, counting now. 1, 2, 3, send your answer. All right. Answer still coming. Thank you all. Thank you for your responses. Now we move to the next sessions, the implementation of REDD-based payments, its opportunity and challenges. We will discuss this topic in 2 parallel breakout groups, national and subnational implementation. In a few seconds, there will be a pop-up message on your screen where you are free to choose your preference topic of discussion. If you don't see a pop-up message on your screen, please see at the below bar of your Zoom screen and click the breakout rooms and choose your preference topic, national and subnational. Host, could you please inviting us to the breakout rooms? Okay, you may choose your breakout rooms. If not, then the host later will assist and direct you to any group discussions.
Mm.
We must not have a moderator in our breakout here.
Is this a breakout group? I didn't do anything.
No, it's still the general public. We are not in the breakout yet.
Okay, because I'm supposed to speak in the breakout, one of the breakout groups, which is a problem.
But there must be some kind of separation because now we only have 90 participants that I see. Before we had 160. So where are the other 60 or 70?
They're going to the breakout room.
Yeah, but it doesn't. I don't know how to do this, and a few people, many people apparently don't know how to choose a group. If you go to breakout rooms, you only see what's names people signing up, but you don't see where you sign up yourself.
It's a free option actually. You can check your menu down there. There's a four square box.
Where it says breakout rooms, but it only shows you the people listing into rooms, but it doesn't give you any option for you to list, to choose.
Okay, so Chris, where do you want to be? In national or subnational?
But it's not about me. It's about dozen people who wrote the same comment in the chat.
Mm.
Because if you see this square box, 4 square box merged into 1 square box,
yes.
If you click it, you can see the option of.
Maybe it's helpful if you share your screen and show us where the box is.
Yeah, I don't see a box.
Or you see the 3 dots.
No, there are no 3 dots.
Hi, sorry, if you could just share your screen, that would be great. Thank you.
Vito?
Yes.
Yes.
We don't see. Nothing is happening. So we see a field at the bottom line, which has 4 squares and says breakout rooms. But if you click on it, you only see the breakout rooms in progress, like who's signing up for each of the 2 groups. but you don't see any button to join yourself.
And I don't even see that field. I only have participants chat, screen record, and reactions.
Oh, then something is missing here.
Okay, can you see it in the right side? There's national and join. There's no button. After you click it.
No.
It's called join next to the on the right side of the national.
No, you don't see that.
Wait. So it should be like this. Let me check. Oops. No, you can't do this.
Okay, yeah, I saw what you mean, but we don't see that. We don't get that.
Okay, so can anyone in the main mention which room that they want? I will put you in one by one.
Okay, let's write it in the chat.
Yeah.
All right. While waiting for others, just again, welcome back everyone to this plenary room. Now let's move to another excitement of today's agenda. Yes, we will see the result of 2 questions that you have responded in the chatter box earlier. So I would like to ask the host to show us the result of questions number 1. Host, you showed a different information.
Can you repeat the questions, Fanny?
Yes, we will see the result of questions number 1. What do you think is the main challenge for effective and equitable REDD Plus result based on the payment in Indonesia? We'll see the result coming out from this discussion. Please be patient. I'm waiting the host to show the image, the result. Okay, I do have the response separately. It's so unfortunate that there's not yet shown. Okay, now it's starting. All right. So here is the result. It's a nice graph that telling us that transparency, clear mechanism, regulation are among those main challenge for effective and equitable REDD Plus result-based payment in Indonesia. So as popping up from the chat box, Amy said those are the solutions. Guys, that's probably not the first question respond. Could you please show us again the result of the first question? What do you think is the main challenge for effective and equitable REDD Plus result-based payment in Indonesia?
I think it was.
That's the solution, Pak Daniel. Unfortunately, we shown you already the solution. But here, what appears as a result from the audiences as the main challenge for effective and equitable result-based payment in Indonesia. Host, could you please again show the result? Okay, let me read the result. The majority coming out from this first question says that policy mechanism, payment, funding benefit sharings, and clear policies are the main challenge for effective and equitable REDD benefit sharing, REDD result-based payment in Indonesia. So I repeat again, the main challenge according to audiences are clear policies, mechanism, transparency, effective governance, and monitoring. So these are those main challenges according to us. So now we would like to invite you reflection after the result. How do you see the majority of that answered based on what you learned from the presentation? Do you still think that those are the main challenge? We need you to respond that in the following questions. I'm still waiting the host to show us the survey questions. Your answer is yes or no. So what we will do now is a follow-up questions from the result. Based on what you learned from the presentation, either you attended national or subnational, and also the global presentation, do you still think that the challenge you choose is the same, still the main challenge? Please respond now and then press the submit button. So host, could you please show the result of everybody respond? Whether we still have the same main challenge as we respond earlier, or no, we change our mind. We have different challenge. Let's wait for a few seconds. Yes. Okay. So the majority of us still think that what we learn and discuss on the priority or the main challenge for equitable and effective REDD result-based payment in Indonesia still the same. I repeat again our result. We said that a clear policy, clear mechanism, funding benefit sharing, and how the payments are among those main challenges for effective and equitable REDD result-based payment in Indonesia. So now we would like to move to the second questions result, the one that you saw already. The second result on the second questions. If you still, yeah. The second question is, what do you think is the main solution for that challenge? Host, could you please show the picture? I will read for you. So the main solution for the challenge is a clear policies, a clear mechanism, clear funding benefit sharing, and also monitoring and a governance. So the follow-up questions coming out from that solution, we would like to ask you again, what do you think is the main solution? If it's still the same main solution for the challenge, is it still the same? Let's see if you still think that the main solution for the challenge is still the same. There will be a yes and no questions popping up. Let's hear from the host. Host, could you please show up? It takes some time for this technology to run and communicate with us. But again, okay, without further ado, I think this exercise will be also reported in our report later on. I see that the time is running. I really would like to turn this over to Amy Duchel to give us a reflection on the result and also a closing remark of this event. Amy, over to you.
Okay. Yeah, no, thanks a lot, Vani. And again, the predictable thing about technology, it's unpredictability. So, but I would like to thank you all for participating. We have 3 minutes left and we're going to end on time here. You know, so many things. I actually saw many challenges when this event started. And as I was hearing the report from the national discussion, I was in the subnational discussion, but getting feedback from the national discussion, it actually struck me how much is advanced in the Indonesian context. I mean, first of all, the sort of the strength of the political will and the NDC that prioritizes forestry and land use. This may be changing with emerging priorities, especially with COVID. You know, we have to sort of keep our eye on the ball of forests and sustainable land use in light of changing priorities. Much more alignment between national, subnational, and local levels than I imagined. Subnational FRELs well under development, local projects being integrated into the national registry to avoid double counting, a lot of really, in fact, quite a bit of alignment across scales in a country where there is a heavy reliance on the national level to give the policy signals. Really interesting discussion on gender in the subnational section. And I know that also in the national section about, you know, the need to connect climate finance to issues of gender equity. It's fundamentally important. And interestingly, at the subnational level, lots of experience with gender, ethnicity, age, sectoral diversity. Despite few female leaders at the district level trying to get as much representation as possible. So tropical forests and climate are key to climate and development agendas. Those are not going away. Indonesia is in the spotlight. Indonesia is especially in the spotlight with the new funds for results-based payment. REDD has served as a testing ground for innovative policies for forest conservation. And it's also created a global alliance that didn't exist before of many different actors working towards this common goal, including, as we've seen from the participants today. Now we need to see, I mean, as a research organization, we're interested in monitoring the flow of those payments. What are the impacts? Who is benefiting? Is this in fact conserving forests? And we'll be intending to do that. So my last words are to thank all of the speakers, to thank all of you in the audience. Please turn on your cameras and give a wave. I would like to see you all. This is yes, we can put it on grid view so that you can see everybody who's here today. It's really spectacular participation. I would like to thank, of course, the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation, who has supported our work over many years. And I'd like to give a shout out to our Director General, Robert Nassi, who continues to support this agenda and prioritize this agenda within CIFOR. And this longevity, it's key to being able to develop good work, engagement and capacity building over time. And finally, Bimo is hiding somewhere in the grid, but Bimo Dwi Satrio is responsible for the event. He organized the logistics, the content. He's a senior research officer. He's a researcher. He's a scientist. He stayed behind the scenes today, but he really helped us with everything. So thank you. Thank you, partners and friends, for being patient with our technology issues. Somehow this keeps, it's our challenge of the virtual world, but we are going to continue to do our best with that. So thank you. Enjoy your afternoon. Please visit our website and you will find the materials. You will find the video that you can actually watch. You will find our publications. You will find our partners' publications. And we look forward to continuing to engage with all of you. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you, Amy. Audience, with that, we conclude of today's workshop. On behalf of CIFOR, I would like to express our appreciation to all of you for making time out of your busy duties to attend the workshops. Please visit CIFOR website to get access of today's presentation and further information. See you in the next national workshop in DRC on the 12th November. Thank you all. Bye from now, and you will see the 3 minutes of CIFOR video that we missed in the beginning. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
CIFOR's global comparative study on REDD+ is the largest of its kind. The goal is analysis and tools to promote what we call 3E outcomes in REDD+ design and implementation. So those are outcomes that are effective, efficient, and equitable. And this is based on more than 10 years of research, capacity building, and stakeholder engagement activities in 22 forest-rich tropical countries. And our theory of change for the project is focused on co-production of knowledge with diverse partners, ranging from governments to civil society and private sector actors, research organizations, and local communities. And really at the heart of what we do is generating and leveraging a very strong evidence base to help inform forest-friendly policies and actions at multiple levels.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Mbak Fani.
Bye-bye, Fani. Bye-bye, Amy. Bimo.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.